my son, a fairly good baseball team, a lot of good products coming out of it. So when he was playing high school baseball, we had a few ex-ball players hanging around the field. For example, Greg Nettles' son played on the team, Jeff Nettles. Raleigh Finger's son pitched for the team. And for those who are from Philadelphia area may remember Lloyd Hutchinson. He never really made it to the majors, but he played in the minor leagues. But his son, Chad Hutchinson, played there, then eventually Stanford. He was quarterback at Dallas Cowboys at one point in time. So you had all these guys hanging around, and there's some very interesting things that you'd watch happen, because when my son was in Little League, and you'd watch Lloyd, every single time his son pitched, if he threw a wrong pitch, he'd look at his father, and his father give him a dirty look. Oh. So, just the way he handled him, he eventually was out of the picture. Raleigh Fingers was there all the time trying to teach his son how to pitch, whether it was warming up in the bullpen, playing before the game, whatever it was. So, we kind of moved along in the baseball world with some of these guys, hanging around there. Anyway, when my son was in high school, I was with Scripps Clinic, and they had the contract to provide medical care for the San Diego Padres. And to go back to some of the minor league stories, ever since my son was about 7 years old, the Padre training camp was in Yuma, Arizona, which is only 2.5 hours away. So, third weekend of March, every single year, like clockwork, when the kids were, 7 through about 13, I took about five boys to Yuma for the weekend. We'd stay in one hotel room, and you would literally chase down fly balls. We'd play baseball on the fields. You'd try and get autographs, all these things you'd ever pray for as a little kid growing up. And over time, you may remember, the fences got bigger and bigger, and the ability to touch base and be around, get close to the players got more and more difficult. So then, when I was with Scripps Clinic, they came to me and said, listen, we need an internist for the team. And it's because my friend was the ophthalmologist for the team, and they went to him and said, anybody who might be interested? Well, we coached our kids together during Little League and whatever. So he came to me, he pulls me in the room quietly, and he says, listen, I want you to consider this opportunity. Would you like being the team doc for the Padres? I said, well, give me a second to think about it. So I hopped on it, and for the next couple of years, when the Padres had moved to Peoria, Arizona, so we stopped going because it was just too much trouble to take 5 kids and get all the way to Phoenix from San Diego. So anyway, so my son comes home that day, and I said, listen, I got an interesting opportunity. He was about to be a junior in high school, playing on the high school varsity baseball team. Well, he went absolutely, as you can imagine, completely and totally off the wall. So one of our responsibilities was showing up at spring training, and we did physicals on the single A, the double A, the triple A, the managers, the major league ball players for 2 weekends back to back. So now all of a sudden we arrive, and I take my son with me. So we arrive in Peoria the first day. I'm nervous as hell because I'm about to be with all these ball players that we've all thought about.
Be more descriptive, Ricky. You're about to put something up there.
No, they're too young for that. Anyway, so now all of a sudden we drive through the gates, and it's like a different world. So, sadly to say, the first person, and we're nervous as heck, sadly to say, but the first person we run into is Ken Caminetti. And I got to tell you, this is the nicest, sweetest, terrific guy you'd ever want to meet. He sits and talks to us for 15, 20 minutes before we even started anything. And all of a sudden, you're starting to feel more comfortable. Anyway, so that's kind of how we got introduced. Well, I spent my time doing physicals on these guys, and my son hung around with the players. So he ended up getting, I was telling Mark earlier, he ended up getting retaught how to hit a baseball by Tony Gwynn. He learned how to play first base, learned how to play first base with Wally Joyner. And it was just a phenomenal experience to, again, father-son experience. We were talking about father-son experiences from before. For me, watching my son experience all this was beyond heaven. Just beyond heaven. I was telling Mark earlier, because the idea of being around Tony Gwynn and watching his work ethic. I was telling Mark is Tony had a video set up behind his locker, And he went in, he videoed every single at-bat he had. And he would go in after each at-bat, especially the ones where he didn't get a hit, and look at what he did wrong, and he'd go back and correct it. I mean, he was a quintessential student of the game in the way he approached it, which tells you why he won 7 batting titles and got the Hall of Fame and those kind of things. Interesting, because I did say to myself, because as you watched and you were talking about how much money these ball players get, there were those ball players who were the quintessential professionals, and then there were those who trashed the lockers and trashed the dugout. I mean, unbelievable, getting paid $15 million a year. You know, it was sad to see because they were just a bad representation of, I can't, obviously I'm not going to tell you names, you see enough of it on TV. But I said to my son, if you're going to be around these ball players, I want you to model yourself after how Wally Joyner and Tony Gwynn and so forth, you know, kept themselves. Cal Ripken, yeah. So I had the opportunity, because when you worked a game, we were responsible also for the visiting team. We never traveled with the team. So, you know, talk about people who were, as you were kind of explaining about Reggie, you know, I'd be in the visitor's locker room, and there were the Barry Bonds of the world that were like Reggie, who really wouldn't spend any time with you or talk to you or do anything. And then there'd be other players who were just the nicest guys in the world. You could sit and talk to them and learn from them. There were a lot of things that went on behind the scenes, and you kind of knew steroids were being used, but it was an unspoken thing. Nobody said anything, nobody talked about it, but you kind of knew what was going on. There were guys getting unconventional treatments medically, not with the Padres per se, but visiting teams would come and, you know, the trainer would come to you and say, hey, could you give an IV to so-and-so of my players? And he'd say no, because some of that stuff was just not.
So I have a question for you. So Fred's father was a trainer with no real training. Nowadays...
Let me address the trainers.
Yeah.
They ruled everything. I mean, I was part of it. I was the internist. There was about 7 or 8 different orthopedists with the team. Okay, so most of what would go on was obviously orthopedic. But, you know, they have colds, they have rashes, they have venereal disease, they have this and the next thing. And so, you know, there was involvement on my part as well. But the trainers ruled everything. If something went wrong with the player, they wouldn't go to the doc that was working the game. They'd go to the trainer. The trainer would come to us. It was like they walked on water. And they literally ruled the roost. Maybe your dad experienced that. The approaches, for example, Trevor Hoffman, obviously Hall of Famer, phenomenal relief pitcher. He had a routine with the trainer and started on the 7th inning every single game. He'd be in the locker room, he'd be getting rubbed down, he'd be getting his arm loosened up. I mean, it was, don't go, you know, Trevor, unbelievable guy. I mean, and he's one of the guys you could talk to while he was going through the routine, it wouldn't matter. But he had a routine with the trainer that was the same every single game that he was. I mean, there would be games where he pitched 3 in a row, so obviously there would be a game where he wouldn't be pitching, but any game where he was potentially going to be coming in relief, they had a routine. Never changed. And the trainer did the same thing all the time. Experiences like sitting in the dugout. I mean, I've had, you know, again, you just say to yourself, pinch me, is this real? I mean, I'd sit in the dugout and I'd have Tony Gwynn on my left, and I'd have Ricky Henderson on my right, and it's a day game, and I'm sitting in San Diego with my son, and I'm saying to myself, is this real? Is it really happening?
Doesn't get any better.
Doesn't get any better than that. And again, experiencing with my son was a phenomenal experience. But those are the kind of things that, you know, that were fascinating to go through and experience. One other thing, it's a shame I didn't know this was all going to happen. I could have brought you a bat, or Mo could have brought you a bat. I have a bat that's signed by Stan Musial. I was lucky enough to have a patient whose father was one of the best friends of Stan. So he happened to honor me with a bat signed by Stan Musial when my dear friend Mo's 60th birthday, I got him one too. It's a special thing. You ask about signing baseballs and autographs and stuff. You know, it's interesting when you're out there trying to get them from players, you'll knock them down to get them. But when you're inside, especially spring training during the season, I mean, you just never asked. It was just not appropriate. It was one of those things that they're right there with you. I mean, I got a ball signed by Larry Walker the year he won the batting title, I think it was '97. The game was close to being over. He was out of the game. He's sitting, I went in the visitor locker room to do something. He was just sitting there in his cubby hole. He was just sitting there thinking. I said, what's going on, Larry? It was just like the end of the season. I'm glad the season's over. The Rockies stunk anyway. He won the batting title, and he signed a ball for me. But I mean, you had to find the right opportunities to do that, because otherwise it was just totally inappropriate to do that kind of stuff. So that's anyway. That's a little bit about more modern baseball, I guess you could say.
Does Raleigh Fever still have the?
Oh, absolutely. Go watch any of the celebrity golf tournaments, because he's in it all the time.